It was an ordinary Friday evening, or so I thought. The golden hues of the setting sun painted the sky as I parked my car in the driveway, exhausted but eager to unwind with my husband, Mark. The week had been long, and this evening felt like a quiet escape, a chance to reconnect. As I opened the door, the familiar scent of lavender candles greeted me, yet something about the silence that followed felt off. The house, which was usually alive with the hum of Mark's playlists or the television, stood eerily quiet. I called out, "Mark!" My voice echoed back, unanswered. Placing my keys on the counter, I noticed a half-empty glass of wine and 2 glasses beside it. My heartbeat quickened as I tried to brush off the unsettling feeling creeping up my spine. Emily, my younger sister, had been dropping by often lately, but I thought nothing of it until recently. There were whispers, shared glances, and moments of silence that had started to feel calculated. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the paranoia. Family is family, I told myself. But tonight, the unease grew louder. My eyes flickered to Mark's phone on the kitchen counter, its screen lighting up with a message. I didn't read it, not yet, but the timing felt suspicious. Taking a deep breath, I moved toward the living room. As I neared, the faint sound of laughter reached me. It was muffled, as if they were trying to keep it quiet. My heart raced, not from fear, but from a growing sense of dread. Peeking through the partially open door, I saw them. Mark and Emily sat together on the couch, their heads tilted close. Emily's hand lingered on his shoulder as she laughed at something he whispered. It wasn't an innocent laugh. It was laced with intimacy, a familiarity that made my chest tighten. Time seemed to stop as my mind scrambled to make sense of what I was seeing. I wanted to burst in, demand an explanation, but I froze. My hands trembled as I gripped the doorframe, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. Could this be real? Was I imagining things? My thoughts spiraled, each one darker than the last. The moments stretched, each second an eternity. The muffled sounds of their laughter felt like knives piercing through my trust. I stepped back, my breathing shallow, my pulse pounding in my ears. The walls of the house that once felt like a sanctuary now closed in on me, suffocating me with their secrets. I knew I couldn't let this go. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed to prepare myself for the truth. And deep down, I knew that truth would change everything. Cliffhanger ending for section. She steps closer and sees something through the partially open door that makes her heart stop. I froze, unable to breathe, unable to believe what my eyes were showing me. The sight before me wasn't just a scene, it was a betrayal woven into my reality. Mark and Emily sat too close, their laughter now fading as they noticed me standing there. The air turned heavy, thick with the weight of my unspoken questions. Mark's face drained of colour, and Emily's eyes widened, her lips parting as if she wanted to explain, but no words came. For a moment, none of us moved. Time itself seemed to pause, holding its breath as we stared at one another. "What's going on?" My voice cracked, breaking the silence like a fragile glass shattering. I wanted it to sound strong, demanding, but it came out small, trembling with the disbelief coursing through me. Mark stood up, his hands raised as though to calm me. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered, the cliché of his words cutting deeper than he realized. Emily, still seated, looked down, avoiding my gaze. Her silence screamed louder than any confession ever could. I felt my knees weaken, but I refused to let myself crumble. "Then what is it?" I demanded, my voice rising with each word. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think it is." Emily finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not," she began, but her hesitation betrayed her. We didn't mean for this to happen. My heart clenched at the admission and anger surged through me, hot and raw. Didn't mean for what to happen? I shot back, each word like a dagger aimed at them both. You didn't mean to betray me. You didn't mean to destroy everything. Mark stepped closer, his hands reaching out, but I stepped back, the distance between us feeling like the only protection I had left. Please, let's talk about this, he pleaded. I can explain. Explain, I repeated, incredulous. Explain what? That you chose my sister over me? That you've been lying to me while I trusted you both? My voice broke, the pain bleeding into my words. Emily finally stood, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know how this happened. It just did. Her words were a slap in the face. It just did, I echoed, shaking my head. You don't accidentally betray someone. You don't just stumble into this. My voice faltered, the weight of my anguish pulling me under. I turned away, unable to look at them any longer. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in with every breath. My trust, my love, my family, it all lay shattered at my feet. As I walked away, their voices called after me, but I didn't turn back. I couldn't. Not now. Not ever. She walks to the bedroom, her mind racing, and decides to check Mark's phone for the truth she already fears. The messages I read were like daggers, each word cutting deeper than the last. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I held Mark's phone in my trembling hands. The screen glowed in the dimly lit room, the password I'd seen him enter so many times before, now granting me access to the truth I dreaded. My heart raced as I opened his messages, scrolling through the familiar names until I found Emily's. For a moment I hesitated, a part of me clinging to the hope that I'd find nothing, that I was wrong. But I wasn't wrong. The messages were there, a string of secrets laid bare before my eyes, flirty exchanges, stolen moments, and plans to meet when I wasn't around. My breath hitched as I read Emily's words. I can't stop thinking about last night. When can we see each other again? Mark's reply was equally damning. Soon. I'll make an excuse. I miss you too. The room seemed to spin as the weight of their betrayal crashed down on me. Each word felt like a dagger cutting deeper than the last. My hands shook, the phone slipping from my grasp and landing on the bed beside me. I couldn't breathe. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick and suffocating. How could they do this to me, to us? My mind raced, replaying every moment, every interaction, every red flag I'd ignored. The late-night calls Mark brushed off as work, Emily's sudden interest in visiting more often, the lingering looks I'd convinced myself were innocent. It all made sense now, fitting together like jagged pieces of a puzzle I wished I'd never started. Tears streamed down my face as anger and heartbreak warred within me. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to confront them both and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there paralysed by the weight of what I'd uncovered. The person I'd trusted most in the world, and the sister I'd grown up protecting, had conspired to shatter my life. I picked up the phone again, scrolling further back through their messages, each one more painful than the last. I can't believe how easy it is to hide this from her, Mark had written. Emily's reply was seared into my memory. She'll never know. We're too careful. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, a sound so foreign it startled me. Careful? They thought they were careful. They thought I was blind, oblivious to their betrayal. The audacity, the cruelty was almost too much to bear. As the tears subsided, a cold resolve settled over me. They had underestimated me, taken my love and trust for granted. But I wouldn't let them destroy me, not completely, not without a fight. With shaking hands, she takes screenshots of the messages, preparing to confront them with the undeniable evidence. When I asked the question, the room fell into a deafening silence. The next morning, the house was heavy with tension, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards as I paced the living room. I had barely slept, the screenshots burning a hole in my mind, their betrayal replaying like a cruel movie. Now, as the sun streamed through the curtains, I knew I couldn't avoid the confrontation any longer. My stomach churned, but I steadied myself. I had to do this. Mark came downstairs first, his face a picture of calm that made my blood boil. Emily followed shortly after, avoiding my eyes, her guilt written all over her face. I waited until they were both seated before I spoke. My voice was steady, but the tremor of anger and pain underneath it was unmistakable. "We need to talk." They froze. Mark glanced at Emily, his eyes flickering with unease. "About what?" he asked, trying to feign innocence, but the edge in my tone had already betrayed me. I held up my phone, the screenshots displayed on the screen. "About this," I said, my voice breaking the silence like a thunderclap. "About the lies, the secrets, the betrayal." Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth while Mark's face drained of colour. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of the evidence hung in the air, undeniable and suffocating. "I trusted you," I said, my voice cracking. "Both of you. And this is what you do to me?" Mark stood, his hands outstretched. "It's not what you think." "Don't you dare," I interrupted, my voice rising with every word. "Don't you dare tell me it's not what I think. I've seen the messages. I know everything." Emily broke down, tears streaming down her face as she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." "Stop saying that," I snapped, turning to her. "You didn't mean for this to happen. Then why did you keep doing it? Why did you lie to my face every single day?" Mark tried to interject, but I held up a hand to silence him. "You had a choice. Both of you did. And you chose to betray me." The room fell silent again, the only sound Emily's quiet sobs. My heart felt like it was breaking all over again, but I forced myself to stand tall. "I want both of you out of this house, now." Mark started to protest, but I shook my head. "Number, you don't get to explain. You don't get to justify. You've destroyed everything, and I don't want to hear another word." As they gathered their things, I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed. My tears had dried, replaced by a cold resolve. When they finally left, the door closed behind them with a finality that echoed through the empty house. I stood there for a long time, the silence almost deafening. I had lost so much in the span of a single day: a husband, a sister, a sense of trust I might never regain. But as I looked around the house, now mine alone, I realized something else. I had also gained something, a strength I never knew I had. Sometimes the hardest truths lead to the strongest versions of ourselves.